Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sleep In Saturday. It's Q&A day. If you're new to this, every Saturday we do questions and answers because on your spiritual journey, questions come up. And what we try to do is we try to do on a regular basis, imbibe spiritual truth. It's one thing, it's our habit, it's our passion, because it gives direction in a very confusing world. Even, for example, this morning, our very own Zoomer, Damodar Priya, she gave class this morning. And I tell you, she's sharp. And we all appreciate it. Wasn't that a great class this morning? Yeah, so we are, and also we're bringing back pre-pandemic. You can see these people are completely criminal, not sitting 6 feet apart. But look at these guys. We are live, and they're like practically, I said 6 feet, I set all these chairs up so they wouldn't be near each other, and they're just like practically on each other's laps. But I don't know. I know. Look, some people are just shaking their head in disgust. But anyway, we're happy you're here. It's personal. So Kaustubha, questions and answers day. It's important. And we've got some good questions. And we don't have a lot of time because we're having a Savor retreat. So,
okay.
I'm sorry. Kaustubha was supposed to be here too. And Mara. Mara cooked yesterday, vegan meatball subs. It was incredible.
Oh.
Kaustubha was like, okay, come on, get on with the show here.
No,
so we've got incredible questions. Kaustubha, you want to mention about the questions? There's a theme.
There's a theme today. I thought even before we get into that, I just want to mention one thing. And that is, if we go back, it was, a month and a half ago or more now, something like that we first entered this whole lockdown and we began speaking of COVID. If we go back and listen to those classes, it was like a different world we were entering at that time. And I remember one point saying, people that we know are going to start to die.
Right.
And somehow like the community that you and I know in New York City and even the United States wasn't hit too hard, like the community of Bhakti yogis that we know. I know in England, that's a community that got hit hard with COVID, and quite a few of the devotees there passed away. In America, I know like relatives of devotees that have passed away. But just recently, one person has contracted COVID, and it's someone that's very special and very dear and very, very important in the devotional community. His name is Bhakti Charu Swami. And for those that know him, he's a Bengali man. He became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, I think in like 1976. And he became very dear to Srila Prabhupada right off the bat, and he very quickly, initiated him, and even sannyas initiated him. He's been a leader and a leader in the bhakti world since that time. And I really see him as a man that he's a teacher, but especially teaches by example, like by his personal behavior, he shows the qualities of a Vaishnava. Don't you think, Raghunath, like that?
Bhakti Charu Swami is incredible. He's one of those persons you're like, when you see him, you're sort of like, oh, that's the way I should be, like you. He's one of these very, very beautiful, wonderful people. For the first time I met him when I was brand new to this, and we were in India with him.
Yeah.
In Mayapur with him. He's a special soul.
One of the things that he's like really
flower petal,
It's like one of the things I really think he's taught through his words and his example is how yogis treat one another, the etiquette, in that, the care in that, and just a beautiful man. And he's been in the hospital for some weeks now. and the reports are just getting, grimmer and grimmer. That not only, is he on a ventilator, but his kidneys were breaking down. He had a heart attack in that condition, and just, it's breaking my heart to picture him in that condition, without other devotees there with him. I know he has Bhagavatam there with him, and he has the Ganga water, and he has the Tulsi leaves, and the doctors have allowed him to wear his Tulsi beads, and but it's and I know that his life of devotion has led to a place where even under the most difficult circumstances, that his mind will be fixed like a yogi, like a Bhakti-yogi's, but these hours that he's in right now are very, very critical. And so I just wanted to mention him and mention his name and mention that, he's in our prayers.
Let's say our Maha Mantra for him right now.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's one of those great souls that I'm convinced that even it's like, okay, he's in a hospital under a respirator. It's when you think of a sadhu leaving his body, you're not thinking of that. You're thinking, surrounded by disciples chanting and things, a more like romantic, if you can say that, way to leave your body. But I'm convinced that Krishna enters the mind of the devotee. Krishna is the best friend. He's Bhakta Vatsal. He's there when you need him. And it's a lifetime of practice of drawing your meditation to Krishna. Krishna will enter the mind when even you don't have the physical ability. Krishna will come to you. There's some yoga process where you need physical ability, and there's some yoga process like bhakti that's dependent on mercy, and that's sort of like a child. A child can make themselves dinner, but they have to figure out, well, where am I going to procure the food? What's the pot and pan? How does the burner work? You can figure all that stuff. Even a 5-year-old can. That is like sort of an ascending process of a yoga system. That's not the bhakti system. The bhakti system is we put ourselves out there in the mood of service and of love. Just like a child. What does a child do? The child cries, and the mother feeds, or the father feeds. And therefore, our mantras are in the mood of crying. Our kirtan is in the mood of crying. And Krishna is with us for that crying. Krishna comes in like the mother and father and swoops us up and cradles us. So I'm very convinced for his safety and for his passing. And, and sometimes it is a romantic, sometimes it is like that romantic way, and sometimes it's not. And I've come to terms with that. Either way, for the life of the person practicing bhakti, it's auspicious.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So shall we begin then? Oh, yeah. So there's a theme that we're talking about in the questions.
Yeah, you want to share what these themes are. It's a big theme, and it's ongoing, and it's on a lot of people's mind, right?
Yeah. Well, it has to do with, I've taken to practicing bhakti. I've become attracted to the wisdom of the sages, to the words of the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and the lifestyle and all of that. I want to embrace it. I want to transform in my life. But I'm living in a world where people don't understand it. And how do I explain it to them? Or how do I negotiate the world in which other people don't understand it? It can be very challenging. And so most of the questions today, if not all of them, at least most of them will have some relation to that. Some of them also kind of reflect the dark world that we live in, Yeah. It's a world of violence. It's a world of exploitation. It's a world of cruelty, that we have to exist in these worlds, trying to live as the Bhakti-yogi and the challenges that we face in that. Okay.
So, ready to go? You're first.
I'm first, meaning you're reading.
I'm reading one to you, my friend.
Okay. Take it away.
Be prepared.
Yep.
Okay. Just lost it. Say something intelligent. Just disappear. There we go.
Lost now.
I'm back. Okay, this is from Hugo Stetz. He's one of the others. The others are the people who are not on Zoom. They're not live. but they are out there listening to us secretly. So Hugo Stetz is from California. Oh, he's also a Californian. It's a different, they're a special, unique breed of other. Hugo says, I'm currently studying at university, and on my campus, I'm one of the leaders of the Bhakti-yoga club.
Cool.
That's a good
Congratulations, Hugo.
A group of students who get together each week for kirtan, spiritual discussions, and prasadam. Can really save you in university, which can go real south. Many people have changed their diets, their worldviews, found inner peace, and upgraded their relationships thanks to the influence of our little satsang. But there is a bit of an issue that has come up a number of times over the past year, and which has become particularly prevalent ever since many of our students returned to their family homes for the summer. Often, people find that once they start on a spiritual path, some new distance and tension arises in their relationships and communities, simply because their interests and perspectives change in an often drastic way. But particularly when people return to their families, tension and even animosity can reach a high point. Families end up asking pointed questions like, why don't you eat meat anymore? You always loved meat. What? You believe in God now? You didn't say anything about God before. What's with these mantras? And what are you talking about? You're into this strange stuff now. I just want to stop and look at everybody here on Live. Has anybody else experienced anything like that? Okay. The negative reactions to spiritual life can be varied. Sometimes there is a kind of dismissive disinterest in the changes a person is going through, or sometimes it can even escalate to animosity from friends and family who are very attached to their particular religion or to their atheism. In total, a person who is authentically exploring spirituality can feel estranged or even attacked by those close to them when they start implementing changes in lifestyle and perspective. So my question is, how does a newly spiritual person deal with criticism, estrangement, and a lack of understanding in their close relationships, especially when they are just recently picking up their spiritual life and so don't necessarily have the wealth or philosophical knowledge and practical experience to defend and advocate their new worldview and lifestyle? What a good question. Kaustubha, I'm dying to hear your wisdom. Enlighten me, please.
Well, it's certainly a question that you and I think we can relate to because we've lived this in our own lives. I have like a vivid memory when I was, I guess, 20 years old of sitting in my little apartment in the old Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and feeling like I found the truth, and in a way that was almost like I was feeling it in my body. Almost, it was almost like a drug experience or something. Like, this is it. It was like ecstasy, but and in that state, I felt like I just have to tell everybody about this now, right? And when I tell them, then they're all going to get it. It just makes so much sense.
So happy. We're all looking for the truth.
Yeah, I remember that feeling. And what happens is that they don't understand it, right? Maybe some do, but many don't. I think it was even worse back then, 30-something years ago. It was probably even harder to explain. There were fewer vegetarians. There were, fewer. The yoga wasn't even a thing.
30 years ago, no, there was no veggie burgers. 30 years ago.
Yeah. So I think both you and I also, just by kind of being connected to the Krishna consciousness movement, we've seen ways that this has been handled poorly, and then we've seen probably like a gradual kind of maturation of how people handle this kind of thing. Would you agree with that, Raghunath?
I was one of the ones who handled it very poorly.
Well, you're the one that went and told your mother that you're not her son anymore.
I told my mom I'm not her son any longer. I don't know why she didn't get that. I was trying to be philosophical with her, but she didn't buy it.
So I think that so specifically this question is in the context of people that have gone off to college. They've been exposed to something new. They've embraced it. Now they're going home and their parents are a little shocked, or their family's a little shocked, or their friends are a little shocked. Whoa, you just got into something very different. And it's something that we don't understand. And they're concerned. And that concern, so let's lay down some principles here. The concern is likely, coming from a good place. So on that level, it should be appreciated, right? It's because they care about you. That even if it's expressed with hostility, it may be coming from a place of genuine concern. And so you gotta set your goal here. If your goal is to convert them, I'm going to explain this also that they understand it too and accept it, and we're going to battle it out until we get there. You're most likely going to fail, and you're most likely going to, rather than decrease this separation that you have from them, this lack of understanding connection, you're likely going to increase it, right?
Because it's amazing that in this process, even though you think there, so many of your friends or loved ones are like, you're so nuts, you're so crazy, there's always like one who's like, makes sense. There's always one who's sort of like goes with you. Like the guy Kaylee Conn, his whole band got into it at the same. That's so rare. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just
sometimes a group of friends gets into it at once. I've seen that. Right? But so again, just my last point was that if you try to defeat them, convince them that they're wrong and you're right, it's likely that you're going to increase this level of lack of understanding rather than decrease it. And so rather than do that, it's probably wise to go into with the idea of that I'm just going to make it as more understandable. I'm just going to try to decrease the level of their worry. I want to illustrate to them that I still have a head on my shoulders. I want to illustrate to them that I'm still capable of maintaining a level of critical thought, right? And that can be done through statements, like, well, I'm at an age where I'm exploring life, that's natural, right? And so, I'm looking into the wisdom of different cultures, and I found a lot here that interests me. Okay, this is reasonable, right? And why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking from the vantage point of a parent. It's my daughter Sachi comes up. I'm just exploring life. I'm like, no exploring. I figured it out for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, even that you can say, hey, I know that for a parent, it's probably tough to see their child, explore life and explore different worlds that they did. But come on, that's what we all have to do in life, and so that's what I'm doing. And I've got my eyes open to things. I'm not swallowing this, hook, line, and sinker. As I approach this, I'm going to approach it with caution. I think even just sharing that kind of thing can do, it can ease their concern a tremendous amount. Whereas if you go in there with a head full of steam, saying, I found the truth, you all don't have it, you're all wrong, and we should all adopt this foreign culture, immediately, then it's likely gonna further the polarization. So so like that. Also another topic might be that there are principles that are important to Bhakti, and there are details that are less important, right? Yeah. The principles are the things that that are never change, and that are essential to the practice, whereas the details are less essential. And it's probably not a good idea to get into the details, if they bring up details, if they want to spend a lot of time on details, or if they want to spend time just like trying to illustrate things that are part of this tradition or faith that are far out and difficult to understand. bring it back to the simple to understand stuff, right? Hey, here's a wisdom tradition that says that happiness is our true nature, but that we've lost touch with that. And when I look around, I see that that seems to be largely true. You know, it makes sense to me that if we attach our happiness to external things, ultimately it's not fulfilling. And I do find it is something that I want to look into and I want to experiment with more. The idea that my very nature is to be happy, and that the mind is in the way of that, and yoga is a way of addressing the mind. You know, just things like that that sound reasonable. Just deal with that. You know, and I think if you know, don't push it. Don't try to defeat them. Don't argue. No point in arguing. Let them see that you're level-headed, and let them see that you are you maintain your level of critical thought, and let them see that you're peaceful, and what to speak of if you can show them that, like, you're even more concerned for them than you were in the past. You're more polite, you're more thoughtful, you know, you're helping them do this and do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you grew up not helping your mother do this or helping your father do that, you know, like if you're able to illustrate a little bit to them that you care, that you appreciate them.
That should drive them even crazier.
Now I know something's wrong.
Now they're even better, and they follow this crazy religion.
So anyway, these are just some general thoughts.
You're not going to win this one, people. It's always going to pinch. It's always going to pinch the parent.
Well, that's the point. So we should understand that it's going to pinch. And so the idea is to lessen the pinch, not lessen to further.
That's our hashtag today.
Lessen the pinch. Okay. Don't tell me that that's a tattoo, though. Okay.
Lessen the pinch. Man.
What if they walk in with a tattoo, like a big tattoo that says, think it through? Then their parents are really going to freak out.
Yeah. That might freak out the parents. Think it through. Depends.
Okay.
It all depends on the parents.
That's my. I hope that's helpful, Hugo.
I think it was a good answer. There is no good answer, and that was a great answer.
There's no good answer.
There's no good answer. Well, I mean, there's no good solution.
Well, yeah.
The material world hurts.
And you know, he mentioned that. He said, I thought this was an interesting sentence. He said, in total, a person who is authentically exploring spirituality can feel estranged or even attacked by those close to them when they start implementing changes in lifestyle and perspective. Now let me go to the other side, right? Let me just go to a bit more to the old school thinking and just share a bit from this perspective. You ready, Raghunath?
Yeah.
Because this is where, like 35 years ago, right? If you and I were to address this question, we may have addressed it more like this. Yeah, it's a fact that when you take up spirituality, people are going to become hostile, right?
Because they're in Maya.
Because they're an illusion.
They're attached.
Because they're attached.
And that's attachments.
And that's part of the world of what it means. Historically, that's what it's meant to become deeply spiritual, that people turn on you. Look at the Bible. Look at Jesus. Look at Jesus. Look at Jesus, the disciples of Jesus and what they went through. You know, practically most of them were killed, crucified upside down, you know, like horrible things, you know.
They were crucified upside down?
Some of them were, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, it's absolutely, I think only one of them, or maybe all of them were like killed for their faith. But it's a fact that we can expect to go through. So we should be strong, you know, we should be able to stand up to that. But standing up to that doesn't have to externally look like fighting, but it can look like cool-headed, you know, like, hey, even if people are hostile to me, you know, I'm not gonna enter into that world of hostility. If you can't understand me, that's unfortunate. I'll try to explain myself to you. If you still can't understand it, well, I'm still going to do what I have to do. You know, this is my life, and you know, so that's part of it too. You know, but we don't have to increase the hostility. We can be careful about that.
Great answer. On a side note, it seems like it's open knowledge that Peter was crucified upside down, says the chat board.
There you go.
Where did I miss that memo?
Yeah.
It's not in the Bible, right? In the Bible, I've seen Godspell.
I don't know if it's in the Bible. Is it in the Bible? See, people, I don't know if it's in the Bible, but it's in the history, you know, the Christian history.
Okay.
Okay. You ready, Raghunath?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Now, in a somewhat similar vein, we have a question from one of our favorite new listeners, Darcy, who's been coming up with some great questions.
We love Darcy.
Okay. So she says...
She's one of our main chatters on the chat board.
You know, we have two questions from Wyoming today.
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Yeah. So first one's from Darcy, who is from Wyoming. Darcy says, I live in a very small Western community of closed-minded Christian conservatives. It's
Sounds
the
fun.
way, huh? It's the way I was raised, but it never resonated with me.
Hmm.
Usually you join a religion and then try to learn and follow their rules. What's been cool about Bhakti is that I already had my morals in place. It's neat that I have been led to a group that has the same values I already have. And I think for a lot of us, we found that representatives of the Bhakti tradition were articulating our own thoughts even more clearly than, like, yes, that's what I thought. And now I'm hearing it even like with clear articulation because there's so much clarity in these texts, What's been cool, usually you join a religion and then, okay, what's been cool, it's neat that I have been led to a group that has the same values that I have. I'm not fighting against myself to conform to your views. They are already in my heart. I live next door to my parents, 5th generation beef cattle industry. The rest of my family is all close by as well, and we see each other every day.
Wow.
I mean, that's even rare that you can say there's a 5th generation of anything in America.
I know.
Right?
5th generation. Yeah.
It just shows that it's an area of our country likely where people are less likely exploring new ways of life, that this is, so therefore it's even harder to try to explain something very different.
Yeah. And she lives with all her relatives come over. I never see my relatives.
Right.
I never see any of my relatives.
So the rest, that's not true. You go see your mother.
My mother.
Yeah.
But even
She's
that,
a relative.
not as much as my other siblings see my mother.
Okay. So the rest of my family is all close by as well, and we see each other every day. I love my family, and they're good people. They're just doing what they were taught. I get that. I can't move and don't want to. Although ultimately, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I like to try to be respectful now. See, like, there's a more mature coming to Bhakti Yoga than us, right, Raghunath?
She's mature.
Yeah. I have hurt and worried them in the past with my poor choices. And although I know this is a healthy choice, they won't see it that way.
Yeah.
So far, this has been a secret. It's all been online. But eventually, I'm going to want to go on a retreat, and I'll have to come out. They know I'm a vegetarian, and they think it's weird. But if I start using words like Hinduism or Hare Krishna, they will think I've joined Al-Qaeda. Okay? After watching Bhakti Ed's story and hearing you talk about other stories of deprogramming, it's a real concern. I would like this to be a positive experience. What words or strategies have you found work best for people in my situation? All my love, Darcy. It's a very similar question.
It's a very similar question. And I tell you, because it's not just Darcy asking this question, I'm going to have to make it a little broader, Darcy, because everybody has a unique relationship with their best friends, their parents, and everyone's different. I truly believe that if you're praying for a calling, you will get an answer to that calling. And then once you get that answer to that calling, you can't say, can I have a slightly different calling because my best friend won't like this calling. This is the call. You get a call when God shows up for your prayers. That's how God shows up. I didn't necessarily I was sincerely praying to God as a teenager. I didn't necessarily expect him to come in this package. You know what I mean? Where all the men wear skirts and robes and dance around and have, it's not like we have the Sika. I never thought was the coolest of haircuts. You know what I mean? I like the Franciscan monks. I like the colored robes.
Really?
I like the Tibetan colors better. You know what I mean? I would have done it differently if I was to do the branding of.
I would have done it differently. But there's no going back.
There's no going. But you know what? That's how truth came to me.
Right.
It's not like Scrabble where you throw your pieces off and you get a whole new set of Scrabble pieces. That's how truth appeared to me, and it made so much sense. It was like my loud calling, and I had to do what I had to do. And you know what? It's like pulling a tooth. No one wants to pull that tooth. And sometimes you just gotta, and when you pull it, then it's free. And I also did this dance with my family. Now, I was a little bit different. I was very independent at a young age.
What kind of dance did you do?
I was like very mission focused, even from my teenage life. And my whole thing was, I'm not giving you advice. Don't give me advice. That's how I sort of like, I don't want your unsolicited advice. I didn't ask for it. I don't want it.
Right.
Don't expect anything from me because I've got my own life. And that's just sort of how I lived. And I severed relationships. It's sort of like, okay, you got a bad tooth, pull it out right now. That's what I did with all my relationships. And I didn't just have family. I had a big Catholic Italian family. I did that with all my friends. And we just didn't have 3 friends. We had a huge community of punk, hardcore friends. And I was one of the leaders of it. And even Paramananda, who's on the show right now, I severed him. I severed him. I severed like. And the funny thing is, now I'm just telling my story, the severance package. So this is one package you can choose, or you can pick the gradual Kaustubha.
No. I was already severed before.
He was already, yeah. But he's speaking earlier of a more gradual,
okay,
less
right. You're saying what I shared now.
Thing. So my severance package. I remember I was waiting for my father to die because he was in a coma for 3 years. And I said, when he leaves his body, I'm going to go to India. And he left his body. And one of my best friends came to my funeral. And I hadn't seen him in 3 years. Now 3 years seems like nothing, but back then when you're 21, 3 years seems like 30 years. So I hadn't seen this kid from high school. And me and this kid grew up together. We used to go fishing together from 8th grade. We used to, we did all high school things that weren't like wholesome, And then I almost got into hunting because he was really into hunting. But I'd never gotten into fully hunting except outside fishing. But then I got into music. I got into my own thing. And then from my later high school on, I became a strict vegetarian. I, got into like yoga. I got into healthy living. I got into Ayurvedic medicine. So that was a very change. I've really changed in those years, especially since 8th grade. So he shows up and I'm committed at this point to the funeral, and I'm committed to Bhakti Yoga at my father's funeral. And the next day, literally, or the next week or so, I went to India. And he showed up at my funeral, and I was like, oh, man, I don't even know what to say to this guy. He was like my bosom best friend. What am I going to say to him? And he came up to me, and he was a good guy with a good heart. And he said, hey, I am so sorry about your dad, because he grew up with my dad. He knew my dad intimately. And I said, before I even have this conversation, I just want you to know there's every reason why you may not like me anymore. And he goes, I'll always like you, man. No matter what happens, I'll always like you. I go, listen, I don't hunt. I don't fish. I'm like a strict vegetarian. I'm like a friend of animals, and I'm like animal rights active. These are the people like hunters hate, the animal activists, I was like, he's like, oh man, that's okay. That's okay. And I go, and I've got really serious into yoga philosophy and yoga. And tomorrow or like next week, I'm going to India and I'm going to become a monk. And he goes, oh, thank God, man. I heard you became a Hare Krishna. Now,
oh, thank
fast
God.
Forward like 30 years. About 4 years ago, I got a message from this guy. I didn't talk to him in 28 years. He goes, yeah, I follow you on Facebook. I'm really into yoga. And I want to come on pilgrimage with you. And so he came on pilgrimage and had like an incredible time. For me and him to come back full circle, it just, for me, it proves like you got to follow your heart's truth of truth. And if you're actually transforming through the process of bhakti. Now, when I say the heart's truth of truth, You could say, well, I got to go into business, or I'm going to go. I'm not saying that. I'm following your spiritual path. It will transform you. It will smooth out your edges. It will change you. And any person who's got a heart, and he had a great heart, they will see that this person is evolving. And it's not just, people can evolve in any spiritual practice. I'm not just saying only our way. So I think people appreciate it. And my mother and my family members, it's the same thing. I cut them off, and I was not cool about it. But 30 years later, they're realizing, you know what? He's a good person. You know what I mean? And my mom is proud of me. It's a hard, that's like a stretch. But, she was always like, this is the guy this was the loser of the family. That's sort of how I was looked at. I didn't go to university. I went off to India, started a punk band. It was like, she couldn't care, But I feel like ultimately, even if no one cared, you got to get to a point where the whole world thinks you're nuts and you're going to do it anyway.
Okay, this is the other side. This is
Sorry about that. No, but I remember, because I was what do you call it? I remember the first time I ever went in New York City, and all the devotees. I came back from India, and now in India you wear a robe, you're cool. You wear a robe in New York City in 1988, you are a nutcase.
Well, Arvind said on the thing, hey, we don't wear skirts. Arvind, come to America wearing that.
Come to America, Arvind. That is a kilt as far as anyone in America is concerned. Who's the Mexican guy in a kilt? That's what they'll say. But anyway, I remember, so I went to visit the temple. I just came back from India, worshiping deities, worshiping Tulsi, doing all these Hindu things. And I went to the temple in Brooklyn, and they were all like, okay, now we're going to go chanting in the street. And I was like, I'm not going out there. No way. And I remember a few years later, I was thinking, I don't care. I will go. I'm so firmly rooted in what I'm doing that I don't care what I'm wearing. I don't care what anybody thinks of me. And you have to get to that point where I think that you have to get that. I don't care, let the whole world think I'm crazy. I firmly believe in this. That's just another side.
Okay.
But yeah, I hope that helped Darcy.
No, she said no, that did not help at all. So you're telling me, don't worry about my parents thinking I'm absolutely insane.
I love you. You know what? Here's the deal. It's spiritually beneficial for them too. Every parent has to understand you don't possess your kid. So even if and you got to learn that lesson. I learned it when my teenage kids sort of like they stopped having effect. My stepkids, I have a tough situation with my stepkids. They don't talk to me. It's heartbreaking for me. But you know what? It's one of the lessons that I don't possess my kids.
Okay, but how about assuming that we prefer it doesn't go that route, right?
What route?
The route that, in other words, if you're telling Darcy, hey, Darcy, the reality of it may be that there's going to be a split, and that's just what we live with. Let's assume that it doesn't have to go that route, right? Like, what could we do to minimize the possibility of that? And one thing I would suggest,
First of all, okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
is that, what I mentioned about principles and details, they're principles of the spiritual practice that are important to follow. That's going to involve reading Bhagavatam regularly. That's going to involve chanting these mantras regularly and things like that. What it doesn't involve is radically changing the way that you dress.
Yeah,
right.
You don't have to show up to the fifth generation of cattle ranchers in a sari.
And with tilak on your face.
They're not going to appreciate it. They're not going to appreciate the bindi dot.
Now, the diet is important, but you say you've already changed the diet. And although it's seen weird, it's like it's gone past the test and so on. So I don't think there has to be too much something happening drastically in your life that's going to shock them. But maybe over a gradual period of time, some of your realizations about life you might share, even within a Christian context, even within a context that they can understand. Even through the words of the Bible, you can help them understand some of the things that you're embracing. And perhaps they'll say, wow, um, she's like become a better Christian than we are. You know, like she's really seems to understand Christianity
Darcy,
deeply.
I don't necessarily think my answer was for you, but I think it was for somebody out there.
Yeah, yeah, it's important that both sides are there. You know, also we can't be, we have to do what we think is right in life, and we can't let others. But Darcy was saying, I've lived that way, but I've caused a lot of pain too, and I want to try to cause as little pain as I can in this circumstance.
You're a better person, I think, than me, Darcy.
Darcy.
You know, I think a lot of times, a lot of my sort of like, you're not my mother. I think a lot of that was just my own ego also trying to like one up everybody. You know, you guys think you're right and I'm the little kid of the household. I'm right and you're all wrong. So I think sometimes in our preaching, so to speak, it can be really, the current can be a lot of ego as well. And I definitely, that definitely was part of my modus operandi. Can I ask you a question, Prabhu?
You can. I'm just going to, before you go, I'm just going to say Kamania shared something on the board. If she could just double check that before I mention anything about that, I'd appreciate it. And let's go on and read another question.
Okay, Prabhu. I'm going to ask you a question.
This is a tough question.
They're all tough today. Jeff from Wyoming. We're exclusive. Today is Wyoming Day. We're only accepting questions from Wyoming. I am an other. Laugh out loud. I listen to you on YouTube while at work. My question is a relationship one. I'm living with my daughter's mother so we can both be in her life and so I can help her out financially. Her mother is a sex worker. She was a stripper before the epidemic. Now she has on OnlyFans page and does what she does.
I looked that up. That's like, it's something like Patreon, but it's very popular for sex workers.
Okay. When we first met, she was a dancer. I also worked in the adult entertainment field as a bouncer and a DJ, so I understand this lifestyle. I have always been spiritual. I joined the Marine Corps at a high school, not knowing them, but realizing it now. I like to protect people. That's why I worked as a bouncer, not because I like bars, but just so I can have an impact and influence customers visiting and working there. I try to set the example of professionalism. In these clubs, there's a lot of abuse, mental abuse, more than physical. Dancer to dancer, dancer to self, customer to dancer, even customers to each other. It's an interesting question. Before getting into Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, I felt the tamas, or the negative energy. I understand it now, listening to you explain it. But my question is, what do I do with knowing? Of abuse, we're putting ourselves through working there. Of abuse, we're putting ourselves.
In other words, you know, I know this and I'm in that. And what do I do? You know, having, you know, knowing this.
Knowing this, what do I do? Like we know too much. It's like the mafia. I know too much. All right. It's in my home now with my daughter's mother working from her room. My daughter is protected from it. Her mother is a good mom, but she's a very dented can from past abuse. I am stuck because of the protector inside of me. Is there any advice you have? I bring up Krishna, but she's not ready to hear it. I know this path can help her. What can I do? This is from Jeff from Wyoming. What a powerful question.
This question required the most thought of any question that I've in the whole time that we've been doing this, you know. And I'll do the best I can with it. And I want to be clear, you know, right off the bat, I'm not a sociologist who's prepared with, you know, results of studies and statistics on sex work and the sex work industry. And I'm also no expert in how to save or, you know, extricate a person from a life of sex work. So what I'll try to do is understand Jeff's question, you know, reading it, try to extract the essence of his question and address it the best I can from the perspective of yoga, or from the perspective of Bhakti Yoga. So Jeff, this is how I understand your question, that one, you work in a world where abuse is common, but you try to serve in that world in a helpful and uplifting way. And two, that you feel that an element of that same abusive world has now entered into your home and into your family, and that concerns you. And three, that your daughter's mother is not ready to hear about God or Krishna directly, which otherwise might serve as a remedy to help protect your home from this negative influence that you're so familiar with outside your home. And so again, well, I also want to say, in answering this, I want to be very careful not to pass judgment on the mother of your daughter or anyone that's engaged in sex work. And I just want to bring up a principle that I think is real important. And I think it has a lot to do with like our world, particularly our world today, but like demonstrations of moral superiority and condemnation of sinners are not so much how the great souls that we read about in the yoga tradition operate, right? Really, we talked about sin, I think it was yesterday, right? Or 2 days ago or something like that. But really the real sin that I see when I read our texts, that the real sin is hypocrisy. That's the far greater sin than the other sins that we may be creating. And so a lot of time the people speaking from their moral high ground, apparently, they're often more guilty of the sin of hypocrisy. And so what I'm going to say is in no way judgmental of anyone working in those kind of industries, because I've seen people that, and I've known people that have worked in those industries, and I understand that all kind of reasons can get you there. And so when it comes to how to convey the value of important life decisions, moralistic or religious explanations often fail where scientific or yogic ideas may succeed. Right. So so what I'm saying is, if you approach this from some platform of morality, it's likely not to help. But if you approach it from a yogic point of view, you may be able to communicate something more clearly. And so without speaking down to someone, you just want to speak on the level of how one person tries to help another person move forward in life to find a better life. And that's what yoga is meant to do. And I think Jeff is on the right track when he approaches this topic in the context of the gunas, or the three modes of nature. And the idea that the environment that we work in and the people that we associate with and the context in which we associate with them will potentially lead to either clarity and happiness, which is the case of sattva-guna, or the mode of goodness, or to dissatisfaction and misery, in the case of rajaguna, or the mode of passion, or to delusion and self-destruction in very dark places in the case of the tamaguna. So Jeff was saying, I work in a place there's tamaguna there, and I've seen the destructive element of it. I've seen how it becomes a place of abuse. One person is abusing another. Some people are abusing themselves. This, it's like, it's a world of abuse. When you enter into tamaguna, it becomes a world of destruction and of self-destruction. Okay. Now I'll speak from my own experience. This is, it's somewhat limited, but my personal experience with sex work is that as a teenager, friends of mine would enter into that world, or maybe more accurately, I could say they were lured into that world, especially girls, but also guys too, that they would be offered like, quick and apparently easy money that way. And for a lot of them, that just became an alternative, a way to operate. And without fail, my personal observation again was that this led to self-destruction. It led to depression, to hopelessness, to seeing life as pointless. I also observed, again, personally, among the people that I knew, that sex work either grew out of the need to pay for drug addiction, or it led to drug addiction, and sometimes to overdose and death. So that's the nature of the tamaguna, or the mode of ignorance, is it will distort one's perception. And people lose themselves in all kinds of delusion and self-destructive mindsets through associating with that tamaguna. And once you've slid into it, you tend to go deeper and deeper, and climbing out of it becomes very difficult. And so the world of abuse that Jeff's illustrated in his question, and that he wants to protect his home and family from, it's very much the world of tamaguna. And the distortion of perception is the challenge that Jeff is dealing with. That how, from what I understand, is like, how can I explain to the mother of my child the potential problems that this is bringing into this home, and for her daughter and for herself? The tamaguna predominates that sex world, and it's primarily the lure of money that keeps one in it. And that is likely going to be where the problem of some change is going to take place. The lure of money, more money than would be otherwise available, can easily distort someone's perception as to the cost of that money. What is being sacrificed. So you're dealing with a common tension. What do I compromise to make money? Coming from an angle of genuine concern for the well-being of your family, you can try to illustrate what is being compromised, or that what is being compromised isn't worth it. You can try to share from your own observations how associating with that tamasic world leads to unhappiness, and that it's not worth the money. And that perhaps that even though the mother of your daughter is doing the best to insulate her daughter from exposure to that world, that it's very likely that with time she'll become aware of it, and that it'll leave lasting impressions in her. And that those impressions will likely play a role in shaping how she makes decisions. And as loving parents, you want to do all that you can to equip her for making decisions that will lead to her happiness rather than to her pain. And, so without, knowing Jeff personally and his situation personally, I would share that, that here's an angle to come from that might be helpful. That you're right. Approach it from the point of the modes of nature, and understanding that who you associate with and where you associate with people and the kind of energy that you associate with, it has consequences. And from your personal experience, from a totally non-judgmental place, but from personal experience, try to illustrate how this environment leads to suffering, and how no amount of money is worth it when there are alternatives. And express your genuine feelings of wanting to protect both the mother of your daughter and your daughter from that kind of suffering. And then see if together you can find alternatives. And it may not be easy, because the lure of money is like, it makes it tough, particularly when people don't necessarily have the education or don't see those alternatives there. But I would suggest that if you approach this from that angle, she may not know what the modes of material nature are and what time, but speaking, translating into language that she can understand, I would approach it that way. Would you like to add anything to that, Raghunath? You're muted.
One thing is that, suppose you're on a boat, the boat explodes, or you get in a wreck, and you're just out there in the ocean, you and your daughter. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to find anything that's floating and hold on to it. The situation, Jeff, and thank you for being so vulnerable, it's an explosion. It's beyond a dented can. It's like, boom, everything. And I can just tell by your nature, the desire to protect, you're going to be the buoy for this child. You're going to be the rock in this child's life.
Right.
And there's a lot of choices we get in life to go north or south. And the child is going to look towards you for, my father was always there. My father had his head on straight, no matter what the mother chooses. And the mother can totally change, of course, at any moment, or she can go even further south. But whatever is happening, without try not to put any judgment on it, but he can be that rock. Be that rock. That's the hashtag. Be that rock for her. And it seems like that's what you're doing. And as you upgrade your life, it'll inspire your daughter. Wow, look at my father. Look at him. I always wanted to be just like him. And they're still living together. I think there's something to be said, even though they're not married, but they're living together. that gives a child some type of like steadiness in sort of or stability rather.
Sure. No, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. That was real important, I think. All right. You ready for the next question?
Yes.
Oh, this is coming from our dear Amy Steller.
We love Amy Steller. She's one of our favorite.
She's with us right now.
Spiritual dancers.
She's a Zoomer, and she's a great dancer. Okay.
Mind if I kick out Uber guy and tell him to start working? Is that okay?
Look at you.
No, just kidding. You take it easy. You take it easy. Sorry.
Okay. From Amy Steller. She writes, a few weeks back, Raghunath shared briefly the relationship with his stepchildren. I had meant to thank him deeply for sharing. I struggle with estrangement from family members. Knowing that someone like Raghu has similar struggles was touching. I either join daily via Zoom or listen through Spotify. I'm a newly divorced mom of 2 kids. I was married for 21 years. All of the details of the divorce, infidelity by my ex, plague me daily.
Infidelity of the ex.
Yeah. Both of my parents have passed. With that said, I lost a husband and his family. I'm sorry, discussed mourning regarding the lost relationship. Do you have discussed mourning? I'm somehow that sentence needs some editing. My entire adult life was devoted to my husband, who is now no longer. I'm 46 with 2 kids. My ex has no moral compass. Daily, I need to teach my children ethics, morals, love. Last weekend, Yogi Charu spoke of Yoga Sutra 133. When you meet someone with a demonic mentality, you love them from a distance. Those words were helpful. Any other words of wisdom that could help me? With love and admiration. Amy.
Woo! Good morning, everybody. This is tough. But you know what's beautiful about this, Amy? These are real. This is not your unite. You're so screwed up, your crazy world. This is life. This happens to all of us. We all get our hearts broken. We all get betrayed. We all fall in love. We all have a birth of a child. We all have a death of a child. We have our parents are doing great. Our parents are of ill health. This is what happens when you get a body. Now, you're blessed because you're on a spiritual path. If you're not on a spiritual path, it's like, boy, your life sucks. On a spiritual path, Krishna doesn't abandon you. And I use this analogy like when my kids were little, we used to live in New York City. And you let the kids run and play, but of course it's in a confined park. So the parents are talking to other parents. The kids are out playing. But every New York City parent has one eye on the person they're talking to and the other eye peeled on that child, because New York City has a lot of crazies that could just pick up your child or whatever. So you always have one eye on the child. Krishna has one eye on you. Because you've called Krishna, God, Bhagavan, Jesus, whoever you call your higher power, you've called them into your life. And Krishna is directly, not indirectly, not sort of off on the side, not sort of in another country. Krishna is actually directing your life. And sometimes when you're very sincere, he starts dismantling your life. Because when you get your life dismantled, you get the very obvious options. I'm going to medicate my pain with some type of drug or some type of prescription med or some type of alcohol or some type of affair. We're going to medicate some pain for a quick fix, or we're left to turn our life over to spirit. Especially when you're hearing stuff like this, like Amy's a regular listener, on a regular basis. You are put in a position now to turn your life to spirit. And that turning your life into spirit, it's like when you renovate a New York City apartment, you're chipping through the wall and then you're like, oh my God, there's another wall. Look, there's wallpaper from 1926. And then you chip through that wall and you're like, oh my God, it's got brick. We're going to exposed brick. What's going on now is you are getting layers of your ego. What is your ego? Well, man, I gave 21 years to this guy. The best years of my life, the prime of my life. And I'm raising these kids. I have to teach them ethics all on my own. I love this guy, and this guy betrayed me. You know what I mean? Krishna is not Krishna, but this is just how material nature works, because it works the same way for materialists. Materialists, it's the same way. You get your life ripped away from you. It's not like a materialist is immune to material disaster. Once you get a material body, you've signed up for material disaster. We've chose it by getting a material body. But as a devotee with that lens of spirit, you can see, oh, Krishna's taking away all these things I was banking on that was giving me security. And all there is Krishna. Now there's just you, Krishna. And I'm fully taking shelter. It's actually, you've been hand-selected, tagged by Krishna for spiritual evolution. And we have to wear and by the way, some of you are thinking, oh, that sucks for her. Guess what? It's coming to you. It's coming to a town near you to wreck your life, because material world does that. It dismantles things. It shakes up the pretty package. You have to hear this stuff from childhood. And if you didn't hear it from childhood, you have to hear it on a regular basis, or else Hollywood creates romantic, perfect storybook pictures of life. And it's just not based in reality. Reality is that we get and we lose. We are healthy and we're sick. You know, we're beautiful, we age. That's life. And I want to take shelter of Krishna, and I want to see there's actually a beauty in loss. There's a gift in pain. There's, you know, where's Madhavapuri? He's getting sent out to cut the lilacs. He's going to cut back all those lilacs. And if you know nothing about gardening, it's going to seem like there's a madman from Long Island with a hedge clipper and a saw, and he's cutting back these beautiful lilacs. He's not a madman. He's a trained arborist. He knows what he's doing. That cutting down, that taking away, that lopping of what appears to be you, it's not you. That's going to grow and sprout. And if you do this with a spiritual vantage point and in a spiritual way, you won't have resentment for this person. You'll be praying for this person from a distance, but you're praying for this person. It will bring out the finer qualities of you that your children will look up to. You'll see spring come. And with that, all the fragrant, beautiful lilacs will come too. It's just going to happen. And people's most tremendous amount of growth they get is generally not when things are going really smooth. There's no impetus to change. When you've been hand-selected to evolve by Krishna, he starts shaking you up. This was last night's class, right? Oh, the whole Bhagavatam is a stories of winners who've lost it all. Kings, queens, sages, heroes, Maharatis, mystical warriors who are going through incredible struggles. You've been chosen by Krishna to evolve, and we're all inspired, and it's going to be an incredible story. Was that useful?
You're asking me, or are you asking
I'm asking
Amy?
you. I wasn't asking Amy.
I think that was very useful. Thank you for that. Before we take the next question, I just want to mention that we just got the official word now that His Holiness Srila Bhakti Charu Swami just passed away.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Such a great soul.
When great souls leave, it's our loss, their gain. Our loss, their gain. Because they've lived in the spiritual world while in the material world. If you knew him, he was in the spiritual world. He changed the lives of thousands of people. And now he's without this body, he's still in the spiritual. With the body, he's in the spiritual world. Without the body, he's in the spiritual world. And the real pain is now I don't get to be with him physically.
Maybe I can read. There's official statements come out from the governing body of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So I could maybe read some of it.
Please.
It says, it is with overwhelming heartache that we announce to you the departure of our beloved godbrother and the dearmost servant of Srila Prabhupada, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami. From his earliest days as a young devotee, Maharaj had the extraordinary privilege of serving as one of Srila Prabhupada's confidential personal servants. And ever since, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj's life has been an offering of love at the lotus feet of his spiritual master. Indeed, there was not a service that Maharaj did not perform for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. As instructed in their very first meeting, Maharaj translated every one of Srila Prabhupada's written works into Bengali, the language of Srila Prabhupada's own birth. To fulfill this cherished order, Maharaj took on years of austerity, rising at midnight to carefully translate his spiritual master's divine words. Maharaj served as one of the most active members of the governing body commission. He was an initiating spiritual master with many dedicated disciples all over the world, and he shared Krishna consciousness in every segment of society, from simple Bangladeshi villages to the British Parliament. Maharaj encouraged and advised ISKCON leaders in management and spiritual topics. He saved more than one ISKCON project in times of despair, and he did his utmost to contribute to the welfare of the most vulnerable members of society. One of Maharaj's unique contributions was the Abhay Charan television series that brought the glorious life and pastimes of Srila Prabhupada to the world on an unprecedented scale. And most recently, Maharaj again heightened that glory of his spiritual master by building a marvelous temple and devotee community in the holy city of Ujjain. Maharaj's voice, sweeter than honey, has immortalized many of our Acharya's prayers, and most famously Maharaj's heartfelt rendition of the Gopi song of separation from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam rings in our ears. Despite his position and many qualifications, both material and spiritual, Maharaj was a humble and loving gentleman who took pleasure in serving devotees. Indeed, one of Maharaj's favorite pastimes was to personally cook and serve prasadam for the devotees. As in all aspects of his service and gentle and cultured nature, Maharaj's cooking was highly refined and infused with bhakti. There are no words that provide solace when facing separation from such a glorious Vaishnava. But we can take some comfort in the fact that His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj lived constantly in meditation on how to serve Srila Prabhupada in his mission. Undoubtedly, he now continues that service under the directions of his divine grace. And then, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but further down it mentions, as Maharaj often glorified Srila Prabhupada with the beautiful words of the gopis. This is from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let us also remember Maharaj as that most munificent Vaishnava who will eternally inspire the followers of Srila Prabhupada to share the glories of Lord Krishna. And it quotes the verse, Tavakatam ritam tapta jivanam kavibir iditam kalmasapaham shravana mangalam srimad attatam bhuvi grinanti me ye bhurida janaha. The nectar of your words and the description of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly those who spread the message of Godhead are the most munificent. And hearing him sing that verse, he sings it very beautifully. And I remember once I was with a friend of mine and he was hearing Bhakti Charu Swami sing that verse. Have you heard him sing that, Raghunath? No? Tavakatam ritam tapta jivanam kavibir iditam kalmasapaham shravana mangalam srimad attatam bhuvi grinanti ye bhurida janaha. Now, when you hear him sing that, and what my friend said to me, just hear him sing, he was so struck that he said, it's just lifetimes of devotion. to be able to sing with that purity and that sincerity. And His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami was just really, you know, to be able to see a real Vaishnava, someone who really embodies the teachings of this of the Srimad Bhagavatam, someone who moves through this world like a true sage. I mean, if anybody could be called a gentleman, you know, it was Bhakti Charu Swami.
Yeah.
You know, we recently had Yogi Charu on the show. Bhakti Charu Swami is Yogi Charu's guru to many, you know, personal guru to many of my friends, many of our friends. A very influential person in bringing Bhakti Yoga to the world in the preceding decades, and a person that when they heard this message, that they gave their entire life, gave their entire heart, gave their entire soul to serving. Just an absolutely beautiful example of a human life, you know, made auspicious. So at this moment, you know, he's left that body behind, the body that we knew. Although we're, as you mentioned, we're confident that his future is all auspicious, you know, still he remains in our prayers at this time.
Haribol, thank you.
Haribol. Maybe we should end there today, I think.
Yeah.
You know, but thank you all. These are tough questions that we took today. We did the best that we could with them. I hope it was helpful. You know, this is a philosophy of joy and of beauty and of celebration, but it's also addressing the most difficult questions and difficult circumstances that we pass through, including death and including all types of abuse and all kind of conflict and struggle that we have. So as you and I often share, you know, this community here, that, you know, that is Wisdom of the Sages. It's not just Raghunath and myself, but it's all of us, people here on Zoom, people that listen, and, you know, on the other platforms. We're grateful to you all that we have this community to share this all together and to pass through these challenges with the clarity and the spiritual power, you know, of Bhakti Yoga.
I've queued up Jayanilo Premadana.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This is a song we sing when great masters leave this world to meditate on them. Thanks to everybody for these great questions. Thanks, Kaustubha. I learned so much just listening to you and shutting up.
I feel the same.
I'm honored to shut up in front of you. Thank you so much. And Mara, thank you for the vegan meatball subs. And thanks to all the people who joined us. We have so many Zoomers, the vegan truckers here, Mallory's here, Urugaya, Damodar Priya, and Amalini. Bob Healy's here. Isabel and Andrew's here. We got Neil Kant is here. Dave Wilson is here. Madhava Puri is here. Jeff Eisenberg's already up there working.
Beautiful.
Jeff and Heidi are here in a moment. And Lucas. Robin Shaver, Lake Placid is here. Everybody's here. Where are the Germans today?
Maybe we could just listen to this song. This is really beautifully sung. And this is the way that the Bhakti Yogis, this is what they do when someone they love or a great soul has passed away. They sing this song. Can't hear it very well. Is it possible to get it a little closer? That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.